Hey Patrick, it's great having you on this podcast today on building a modern workplace with MSIX on Azure. Now, I know you as an industry expert on virtual app and desktop delivery, also a great guy to work with. I've seen you share your expertise at many community and vendor events, but perhaps you can introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Ingmar. Thank you for having me on your podcast. My name is Patrick van der Born. I'm the architect of the Technische Jongens. That's a Dutch company, and then if I need to translate it to English, and sorry, Henry, my colleague, it's more or less like technical fellows. I think that's the correct translation.
I think that's a good translation for sure.
Yeah. Currently, I'm mainly focused for I think 20 years now in the end-user computing space, mainly virtual apps and desktops, Citrix, remote desktop services from Microsoft, AVD. And Omnissa nowadays.
Yeah.
As of 2016, I'm also focusing on public cloud, mainly Microsoft Azure. So deploying a lot of Citrix and Azure Virtual Desktop customers on the Azure platform, and doing that via an infrastructure as code approach. And basically, for me that's a new thing. What I like a lot is to guide companies to the new DevOps Scrum approach instead of the GUI clicking world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really nice to do. I'm also very active in the community, and I'm very proud that Microsoft has recognized me some weeks ago with the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional status, so MVP. And I think I'm now 3 years a Citrix Technology Professional, CTP. Yeah, and I'm very proud of that. And yeah, I could not get those community awards of those vendors without being actively involved in the Go-EUC community program. I participate a lot in that one too. And also the remote graphic experts, that's basically the GPU nerds. So I know something also about remoting protocols.
There you go. So a seasoned veteran in EUC, long history, long track record of implementations as well. As you said, you're recognized as an MVP, CTP, and others. Can you tell us, what does it mean being an MVP? I mean, I know it's short. You've been a CTP for a while now. Like, becoming an MVP, do you need to complete all certifications and like unlock a bonus level, or how do you become an MVP?
How do you become an MVP? Mainly, I'm very active in the community, writing a lot of blog posts, sharing my knowledge on various events, talking a lot in the community on events with like-minded people. And if you want to become an MVP, you need to get nominated by another MVP. So I was very pleased that I received an MVP nomination, I think in February, March, from a fellow MVP. So still thank you for that. And then you have to fill in like a 3 hours form with a lot of questions. Why do you think you can become an MVP? And then you need to wait, right? If they let you in. And mainly it was a bit fun because I had a holiday. I was in Legoland, Denmark, with my kids. And for some reason I opened my LinkedIn because I muted all my social notifications to get focused. And for some reason, then you see the notification amount, the bubble, and it stated like 102 new notifications, and I was like, "What? What's happened here?"
That's a lot.
Yeah. Then I've seen that the MVP program lead shared that I was accepted in the program, so that was really awesome. Also during the holidays, so I'm still excited for that. Yeah, and I'm really fresh in the MVP program, so. I'm still experiencing what the program is and what benefits I'm getting, but as the first weeks it's really nice. It looks promising.
Well, I think the program benefits from having you. Honestly, I mean, I've worked with you. I've seen you on the sidelines. I think you are, as you said, contributing a lot to the community. You're contributing a lot to the projects you work in. So I think you'll be a great addition to the MVP program.
Yep.
And they definitely are happy, lucky to have you. What I also found really cool is that you were a freelancer. You started a business, with some fellow experts. Like you said, you named it the Technische Jongens, or the Technical Fellows.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that name? Why did you start building a company with people and basically giving up your freedom that you had as a freelancer?
Yeah, I wouldn't phrase it like giving up your freedom, because I'm still one of the owners of the company. But you need to tell your colleagues or the people you run the company what do you want to do for the next month, and then you need to deliver, right? Because they expected you to do so. But let's get a bit back, because I started as a freelancer 5 years ago, mainly focused in the EUC space, and then I was mainly running some projects, maybe at a large bank and other companies. And for some reason, companies would find me, and also thank you a lot from Citrix, is that they sent me a lot of customers which having trouble with their environments. And then mainly on every Friday I got my calendar free to schedule those troubleshoot assignments, right? And if you do it that way, that's like running and sitting behind your desk. Like sometimes you got 3 requests in 1 week, and the other weeks you do not have any other requests. And then that was my free time to add to the community and do community stuff. But if you're an independent contractor, it's really awesome if you're getting assigned to a troubleshoot issue, like a company having big issues, and you find the root cause of the issue, you fix it, then they will recall you all the time. Like, hey, if we have a project or another issue, we need to call Patrick.
He knows his stuff. Yeah.
He knows stuff, or he can fix stuff. And when your schedule is full and they call you, you have to say no, right? If you're one guy. But that's also a pity, because they will move to another one and you will lose that customer, and maybe they will contact someone, another independent contractor who also does the job really awesome. So I had some like-minded people in my network, like Henry and Brian and Jeroen, and I always phone them like, okay, I'm really busy, but I have a troubleshoot assignment for you. And I know if I delegate that task to those guys, that the job is done as my quality, right? So I do not have to worry anything about, and I can tell the customer like, okay, if you contact that guy, he can also help you really out really well. So eventually we were thinking like, hey, maybe we can do that smarter and combine the forces and just get some contract with large customers or managed service parties who do not have that high skill knowledge as we are, because they usually have more general knowledge instead of high skilled EUC knowledge, and we help them out if they have any difficult questions or having priority 1 incidents, for example. And that's where the Technische Jongens has started the company. So mainly what we eventually immediately seen is that at the most Citrix customers, they also have the Citrix ADC NetScaler, and for some reason the most of our customers, or the most people in the world, they're a little bit afraid of NetScalers, and we can also do that. So we also managing a lot of NetScalers at our customers.
So the Technical Fellows grew as a collective of independent contractors who will have same passion, knowledge, and level of expertise, and you started doing business together. Yeah.
And mainly, if we phrase our strategy, is that we want to be the innovative EUC specialist, which can help your company to do innovative stuff. And managing NetScalers or managing P1 incidents, it's a nice service, but it's not really innovative, right? Mm-hmm. And what we also doing is that we are developing now a service, we call it the Image Factory, where we deliver via an infrastructure as code approach, Scrum Agile approach, a fully automated patched image out of the box every month after Patch Tuesday, including updates for all the other apps which are reside within the application or in the image.
And that's available for Citrix, Omnissa, Azure?
Yeah, AVD, remote desktop services.
Nice.
Mainly every operating system which can have an image, we can build it.
Nice, and I think it's great that you guys, you started as independent contractors. You found each other and you started to create a collective, which is now a company which is as far as I can see, is very successful in reaching the right clients and giving them a great service, especially compared to some others that they are used to. So I think it's great that you, first of all, that you are on board of this podcast, and I like seeing the work that you do with the technical fellows. In fact, the reason that we've planned this podcast is because of a project that you've recently done with a customer. What I've been told, I was part of it, the customer was running a virtual desktop on some pretty outdated hardware due to be replaced. Let's say many organizations today, they were moving towards a Microsoft modern workplace. So Intune managed, Windows 11 devices, Entra ID joined, only connected to the public internet, and for security and compliance reasons, these devices had no direct communication with internal resources, which is, today's world, I think is a good decision with so many cybersecurity threats. Meaning they were relying on Azure Virtual Desktop or AVD, basically to provide access to client-server applications and the more legacy applications, or those who need more high security perimeter around it. And they were delivered as remote apps. So for an average user, that's just another app on a device. What was your role at this customer, and why did they hire Patrick?
Yeah, a good question. I came in on this project on July last year, and they wanted to deploy a fully automated Azure Virtual Desktop environment to their customer, right? And they are not getting this project up and running, so they knew I was doing that stuff, getting companies to the Scrum DevOps Agile approach, and I mainly started to build the environment, which they described in their high-level design, via code for this customer. But when we getting further in the project, we hired some high-skilled other people. So I was mainly the tech lead of the Azure Virtual Desktop component of this project, and responsible for the implementation of the Azure Virtual Desktop stack and the infrastructure as code, which we're using for the deployment of the Azure Virtual Desktop stack.
Cool. Sounds like a very robust approach, especially with AVD. Now, I've been around in the industry for a while, not sharing my age here, but I've been around for a while, and I do acknowledge your expertise, but I can imagine that not everything went as planned with an implementation. What were some of those difficulties that you faced, and how did you solve them? If you're willing to share your knowledge, of course, but I think that's what you do.
For sure. Like one of the things which is always really complex in these type of infrastructure as code project is that organizations are not used to that way of working, right? So they need to switch to their ETL clicking approach towards a DevOps approach and deploying everything with infrastructure as code via an OTAP principle, like development, acceptance, production deployments, and test it out and do that without clicking, so it's being really reproducible. So one of the challenges in this is that you need to train a lot of employees or administrators on the job how to proceed with this new approach, and that costs a lot of time. And in the meanwhile, you're also developing new stuff, right? So the train needs to run. So you also need to deliver. So sometimes it's really a hard way to find a way between training on the job and not getting too far away from everybody in the project and getting things done. Mm-hmm. So that's mainly from the infrastructure as code approach. If we look at the Azure Virtual Desktop approach, is that the main issue we faced in the beginning is that Azure Virtual Desktop has some limits on the amount of application groups you can deploy within one Entra ID tenant, which is mainly 500 application groups, so Azure Virtual Desktop application groups.
And that's per tenant, right?
That's per whole tenant,
yeah.
The Entra ID tenant, so not per Azure subscription. But since we're deploying everything via code, we also described the remote applications as code. And at this project, we need to land 400 applications within the Azure Virtual Desktop platform. And that's 400 application groups if you need to assign them independently. Sometimes you can group some applications, but yeah, in the end, we just had an Active Directory group or an Entra ID group with the description of the application, so we can entitle people based on the Active Directory group. Mm-hmm. But if you recall, we do everything with code, and we have a branching strategy. So basically what we do, every night we reprovision the development environment based on the develop branch, right? So we call that a nightly build. So the whole Azure Virtual Desktop is removed and rebuilt from scratch, so we can test all the changes the next morning.
That's a good best practice, yeah.
Yeah. When everything is okay, we do a pull request to the acceptance branch, and then the acceptance environment is triggered to being redeployed based on the code changes we did in the dev, because we pulled it to the acceptance environment. So in the acceptance environment, we did a lot of user acceptance testing. So there were some user acceptance test coordinators on the project, and they will test the new applications which came in with the end user. And if everything is okay from a technical perspective, then we do a pull request to the main branch, which eventually will update the production environment. But when you do this approach and you have to onboard 400 applications, you can imagine that for every environment we need to create the application groups for those applications. So if you have 3 environments with 400 applications, let's do some math, it's like 1200 application groups, right? And if you look at the Azure Virtual Desktop limits, there is an app limit of 500 application groups per tenant. There is a small asterisk behind it, so you can request or increase that limit, so it's not specified what the highest limit of those application groups is. But what I've learned is if you have the remote desktop client, like the Windows 32 MSI application, you will notice that if you log on to the Azure Virtual Desktop environment to retrieve your entitlements, you will see that dialog box which stated, "We are refreshing your feeds." And what I experienced is that the more application groups you provision, the longer that the wheel is spinning, like we're refreshing your feed. So I think, I did not test it, but I think that we will, there should be a sweet spot in between the amount of application groups you will provision and the speed of the refreshing your feed in your desktop client.
Yeah, it impacts scalability of the user experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And when we did this project, we also had one design rule, and that was really new to me, and that was that we had an MSIX unless approach. So because we also wanted to land those applications, if possible, on the modern laptop. And one of the goals of the AVD environment is that we also, besides of the remote apps, we would have a full desktop which is comparable with the laptop. So we also need to have all the apps in on the AVD part.
Yeah, so you would have a cloud workspace.
Yeah.
Similar to the physical workspace, yeah.
Exactly, and we needed to start with the MSIX app attach from the beginning. I know there is a new service, but that I will talk with that a little bit later of the app attach part, which is GA for some, I think 1 week or 2 weeks now.
Yeah, that's somewhere in June they GA'd it. Yep.
Yeah.
Mid-June.
But back in the days, we were depending on the old MSIX app attach implementation, and one thing what we also had an issue with is that the entitlement of the app attach application was dependent also on application groups. So you need to add an application group to an MSIX package and entitle an Active Directory group or Entra ID group to it, and then it will be attached to the session of the user.
Yep.
They resolved that in the new release of app attach.
Yep.
But
the latest
since
app attach release.
Yeah, we're hitting the limits already with the 400 remote apps. If we also, back in the days, need to add all those application groups in for the app attach part, then it will grow tremendously. On the other side is that if you look at the MSIX app attach, if you need to attach 400 applications in general, you need to put that on a storage account. And as we all know,
because app attach is basically the delivery mechanism of MSIX, right? So
it's
it's mounting a basically disk volume to the session host.
Yeah.
Then you get a form of, let's say, app layering or disk layering. So it presents disk instead of installing like you do with a native MSIX. App attach really is streaming that disk over the network. So you have a dependency on that network.
Yeah.
Basically the bandwidth, the latency.
Latency, IOPS.
Yeah.
And mainly the last one. If we convert the MSIX package, because you convert it to a SIM file, which is actually a container format, which you can mount in the operating system, as you said, like app layering. And I have some experience with a lot of app layering projects in the past, like the user dynamic dynamic layers, so that are layers on demand. I think you can compare it with that one. And I was asking myself, because this was my first app attach project, is how many IOPS do I need to provision to get 400 applications up and running for 300 session hosts, where 3,500 users are leveraging all those MSIX-based app attach SIM file applications, right? And I'm starting to read the documentation, but I should know better on forehand, because Microsoft cannot tell you like, okay, you need to have 10 IOPS per application, because I know from experience, if you for example create an app layer or an app attach package for Notepad++, that will consume less IOPS if I do the same, for example, for SolidWorks or Autodesk Maya.
Quite obvious, yeah.
And so that's a really a different amount of IOPS which been sent to the storage account. And in Azure you need to calculate the IOPS really carefully, because you need to provision the file share at the size to get some guaranteed performance over there. But if it's not really clear for you how much IOPS you need to provision, that can be an issue for a performance issue if you provision too low IOPS, right? Secondly, what was my request is like, okay, I tested the app attach with, for example, 20 packages and it's working, but what is the limit of the amount of app attach packages we can attach per user session or per session host? And it was also not really clear for me in the documentation where they could state it like, okay, you can only attach 25 packages because the virtual bus or the virtual channel is full, right?
Yeah.
And in the documentation it stated like, okay, it depends on your CPU.
Good.
So I talked to my
project manager.
No, like, okay, I'm not sure if we can attach 400 applications to one session host, because I never tried it in real world, and it's not documented anywhere, because the app attach, in my opinion, is still a bit bleeding edge technology. It's not that around for such a long time that everybody or every company is using. So I could not find a lot of information about that. So mainly, if I should recall three issues or three questions we had on the app-attach implementation, and the first one, which is now resolved in the current GA status, is the dependency on the Azure Virtual Desktop application groups, because we're hitting the Azure Virtual Desktop service limit there. Secondly is the issue with the storage account IOPS we need to provision. We could not give an answer about, okay, you need to provision 100,000 IOPS. What does that cost, and is that enough? And thirdly is that we do not know how many packages we can attach to the session host.
To the session host, yeah. The amount of disk volumes that you can mount.
And I want to add one thing, because later we started with security, and we mainly leaning on the App Locker implementation of Microsoft, because that's really awesome. And we had some pen tests, and App Locker is really cool in your last resort as a security layer. But what we've noticed is that the MSIX app-attach implementation, they just mount the package on a random path. So you cannot allow the package on a code signing certificate, like we can do with the native MSIX implementation. Trust all those MSIX packages which has been signed by this code signing certificate. So we needed to scan all the SIM files independently and generate file hashes of all the DLLs, executables within the app-attach package, so we can import that into App Locker, so we're allowed to run the application via App Locker, which has been in the SIM file.
And that's because of it mounts with a GUID, which is seemingly random. Exactly.
And of course we automated this during our deployment. But what because I will not do that by hand on every app-attach package. But the hashes were growing massively, so I was also thinking like, I don't know if when that amount of App Locker rules will get some performance penalties, right? Validating hashes.
Yeah, you said App Locker is awesome. I think from a security perspective, you know, in net, yes, for sure, it protects. Personal opinion, managing App Locker, especially combined with app-attach, as you just described, is kind of painful. But it's definitely a great implementation for security perspectives. Yeah. But you did went ahead with app-attach, and using through Azure Portal, right? Although you automated it, of course, through your image builder. Did you face any other challenges during troubleshooting or mounting, or how did that? What was the experience?
Yeah, mainly in the beginning we get some weird issues, and then you only got a message like the app-attach is not working, and then you need to dig into the event log, like what's going on the other side. Sometimes it's weird. You need to go on the session host, which one to retrieve the SIM files, and then you need to set up a UNC connection as system, and then it start working out of the box, for example. That's such things we faced in the beginning. Later, when we started to automate stuff, we're not depending on the ARM portal, which scans the information in the metadata file of the app-attach package. We just generated our own scripts, which readed the UNC path, metadata files, and generated bicep files to deploy the app-attach package to Azure. What we also experienced with updating, but it's also fixed in this current release of the GA of the new app-attach approach, is that updating packages was quite hard. For example, if we wanted to update an SIM file with another one, we experienced that the SIM file wasn't used by, for example, 300 session hosts here, and that we or need to shut down the session hosts to get the file handle release on the SIM file, or we need to kill the SMB handles. But then the application will crash inside the session host. Or we need to add some logics to create a different SIM file with a different file name, release the other one, and yeah, that was a lot of automation we should add to get the MSIX updates work.
Quite a lot of work for managing applications.
Yeah.
So knowing all this, hearing this, you spend a lot of time troubleshooting and trying to build the right pipelines on getting this managed.
Yeah.
Like how did you go about finding a solution, and where did you end up with?
Yeah, we all, from a community perspective, I know AppVentix because it was also really awesome in this predecessor, like the AppV scheduler.
Yep.
And I know that's history, but if we can get a T-shirt with AppV scheduler, I still want it.
It's heritage.
yeah. But nevertheless, we know Bram and you, so we asked a demo of the AppVentix one, like, hey, this is the AppV scheduler, evolved in also handling MSIX packages, also AppAttach and natively.
Yep.
And also AppV packages. And what we mainly seen as a big advantage of AppVentix is as follows. It solves some of our issues, like back in the days, so some months ago, the issue with the application group, because we're not dependent on the application group, since we can use AppVentix to deliver the MSIX packages towards our end users. Secondly is that with AppVentix we now have an advantage that we can cache all the applications on the session host. So what we basically did, we provisioned session hosts with local SSD on it, and we pre-cache all the MSIX packages on the SSD drive of the session hosts. So we're not dependent on any IOPS calculation of the central storage account. Yeah, of course, I know the more IOPS you provision, the faster the copy process of the caching mechanism is working. But eventually, when the package is on the local SSD, then you got just local SSD performance, right? When
Yep.
Mounting the MSIX.
You're isolating the performance to a single host instead of having, shared latency. I mean, shared storage is shared latency. So
Exactly.
if one is breaking or consuming all the IOPS, then that's shared by everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was a bit funny though when we implemented AppVentix. We were still running on AppAttach, and we migrated away. And for some reason, AppVentix was so eager to manage everything that it also removed the AppAttach assignments.
It's taking over management of all your MSX applications.
Yeah. But the third thing we also was really handy, which AppVentix resolved for us, is that we can now mount the applications, or I don't know if you call it mounting with MSIX packages, with the native MSIX approach, just using an MSIX file, and we can just tell AppLocker now, like, okay, this is our code signing certificate. You now need, we trust all the MSIX packages which has been signed with this certificate. So we're also now getting rid of scanning all the file hashes of the files which reside in the MSIX package, because it will just run out of the box.
So it brings you some technical benefits, right? So there's less pressure on your shared storage. You have easier implementation of AppLocker.
Yeah.
Like, what was the benefits from more an organizational perspective? Like, did you save a certain amount of time, or initially you talked about the agile DevOps way, the way of thinking basically, and the way of working, which required some instruction to the people in the team, to the IT admins. Like, what did it bring for the project organization and maybe even the run team as well?
Yeah, good question. I think they like the way how they can update applications. And you can just say to an application like update, and AppVentix is doing the release for you when it's so that's one big win. From a code perspective, I do a lot with code, so if the code is running, I don't care what's running behind. So that was also really working really cool. And
you are using the PowerShell integration in the
Yeah. We eventually give you guys some feedback to update the code, so it's working better with an as code approach.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is always a two-way street. I mean, that's how Adventix was born and grown. This is also an initiative from the community, how it started, and so it's great to hear that. Yeah, and it's great to hear that you guys knew Adventix because of community and contributing by improving the PowerShell commandlets.
Yeah. And for the run team, if they want to use the GUI, which is hopefully prohibited on the end, because we automated a lot with pipelines, but I can imagine the GUI of Adventix. It's easier, I guess, to understand doing that all from the ARM portal, because in my opinion, I'm not clicking a lot in the ARM portal, so maybe I'm a little bit biased doing everything as code, but I need to search my way around in the portal sometimes. But that can just be me, not being that much in the portal itself.
Perhaps you're biased because you're more focused on code and CLI.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm biased because I'm here representing Adventix, so I can tell you, the user interface of Adventix is super simple to use, Patrick. I'm coining your phrase, super simple. But I mean, for sure, I think Adventix, the UI. You can prohibit it if you're relying on code, but I think there are some benefits in using that UI, managing your application lifecycle.
Yeah.
So
one thing which we also used from Adventix, firstly we implemented FSLogic's app masking.
Yep.
And we're also now distributing the app masking rules with Adventix from automated way. Like previously we added the rules to an image and then the central location, and then we need to copy it ourselves. And sometimes if you changed the app locker rules, the app masking rules, you do not want to rebuild your whole image again, right? Because that can take 4 or 5 hours. And now we just copy that to a location which Adventix knows, and then it will distribute all the app masking rules towards all our Azure Virtual Desktop session hosts.
Yeah, we'll take care of all app masking.
And we can also reflect our develop OTA production approach, develop acceptance production approach within Adventix really easily. So
it takes care of the staging process as well. And like you said, app masking, it's not needed for MSIX because you can. So the stages, it's staging and registering. Staging is basically the mounting on the disk, right, or the installing. Registering meaning you're assigning it to a user. So MSIX is built for, let's say, a multi-user environment. So if you only want to register it for a couple of users, that works. But you will typically have some installed applications, and I'm sure you'll have some, installed apps, whether that's Office or some other apps where MSIX isn't ready, and then you need app masking to start hiding them again for, those users who should not have access.
Exactly.
It's very common that we see a combination of MSIX, either native or app attach, sometimes even their combination, combined with native installed applications. So I think it's very common to see app masking used in the same environment, which is why we build it into Adventix as well. All right, Patrick, it was a pleasure having you in the podcast today in the conversation, hearing you talk passionately about technology and the community, but also your passion for helping customer achieving their results. So I want to thank you for sharing your experiences building a modern workplace with MSIX on Azure, and hope to see more great things from you in the near future. Cheers.
Thanks for having me, Ingmar, and see you soon.